But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that.
Oh no, it's not. It's not a matter of opinion.
Is it not?
The universe factually began 13.8 billion years ago. There's a beginning to this.
So as I walk past, I'm just saying that the burden of truth is with you. You say God exists, prove me wrong. So if you're saying He exists, then it's up to you to supply evidence to say that He exists. If you assumed I was an atheist,
Well, that's usually what an atheist says.
what about the burden of truth?
Yes, that's usually the first response.
I think atheist would mean that I'm anti-theist.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying there isn't a God.
Yeah. So atheism, up until Charles Bradlaugh in 19th century or other, yes, atheism was classically coined as just being without God, just saying, I don't really believe in God or whatever that means.
A very risky thing to say at that time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very. More than risky. Absolutely. Nowadays, what we're out here talking about is the frivolous way in which the concept of God is being dealt by especially the new atheists like Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens. If I am pointing to something that is inconsistent with human rationality, inconsistent with our scientific observation, then yes, the burden of proof is on me. But if I'm saying that you and I are alive, that is a truism. God, as defined by all of the major faiths, is the cause of all causes. We know that nothing happens without a cause. This universe coming into existence, everything that we see, the design, everything. So that is why it is very simply, it is a positive claim that rationality and our observed experience testifies to. So if I was pointing to a fairy or something magical that is totally contrary to human rationality, then you would say, well, the burden of proof is on you. But I think it's different when it comes to God. Not that the burden of proof is not with us, but there's a substantial amount of evidence, whether it's deductive or through reasoning, that shows that this is different from fairies. And unfortunately, the leading new atheists, as I'm sure you're aware, have tried to equivocate it in this way, just totally disingenuous.
Yeah, but I don't know what you want me to answer to that. Yeah, I'm a Dawkins, a Harris and Hitchens fan.
So, like Dawkins says, I have fairies in my garden. Prove to me that I don't have fairies in my garden.
That's just like a whimsical, that's a an analogy.
That's an analogy, yet that is an analogy that he doesn't just use in that book. He uses it in most of his talks and in his responses when people say that God exists. He actually thinks that this is a good argument, and we can easily debunk this, and it has been debunked many times, and it shows that this question has not been dealt with. Nobody is saying that there's a magical fairy that created everything. Nobody is saying that there's a magical fairy.
I think he's saying more along the lines of, as in the title of his book, The God Delusion, saying that people who believe in the God are deluded.
Yeah, but do you see that you cannot equivocate?
He'd be saying that if someone was to say they have fairies at the end of the garden, they would be deluded.
Yes.
So I think that's his analogy. Yes. In that sense,
His analogy is basically saying that God exists is just like saying that any magical thing exists. This is what he always uses it as.
And burden of proof.
Yes, and I'm not saying that there's no burden of proof. Of course, if God is not visible by the naked eye, and I'm saying that God exists, then naturally, I think, for example, all of the forces that are not visible by the naked eye, electromagnetism, strong nuclear force,
gravity,
weak nuclear gravity. We had an atheist yesterday, a science teacher here at Cambridge, try to make his argument, I'm not even sure that gravity exists. Do we really exist? It shows the lack of seriousness, right?
Exactly, yeah.
If God exists, there should be evidence. And my rationality should point to it. My nature should point to it. I should have some reason to believe. I'm a Muslim. It is forbidden in Islam to blindly believe without some reason behind it. It's irreligious, un-Islamic. So that's why I'm saying that when we see the design of the universe and we see the function of every specific particle, we say that you cannot have function and design without a designer, because function requires laws that underpin them, and you have to have a lawgiver. So it's actually a great deal of blind faith on the atheistic position when we see that all of these things always require intellect, to say that there is no intellect and it's all blind forces.
Yeah, as an atheist, I don't say there isn't a God. This is why I think Dawkins says he's like 75% is agnostic on his scale of 7 to 10 or 9.5, whatever the scale is.
He's described it in many different ways. He's even said in an interview that, I'll come back to you in 10 seconds, but he's even said in an interview that even if I had a voice beckoned to me and I actually got a stepladder and I looked at God or I heard God, I would still probably not believe. I would think I'm just hearing voices. Now that's not honest.
Well, maybe that is honest. Maybe that is honest opinion. You know, yeah, I don't know. I don't believe in any gods. I don't believe in a creator. I'm not saying that there isn't, but I just feel that there are other things that explain our being.
Okay, like what, please?
Well, like
What replaces a creator in your mind?
so. The natural cycle of evolution that there was a big bang and we come from a bacteria.
So
and
what caused the Big Bang?
yeah, well, you're going into the something from nothing argument. So then I don't know what started the Big Bang. No,
Okay. So
but just because I don't know, we don't fill that space with a god. I think that's the argument with that Hitchens.
No. I agree with you that that's not a complete. That's actually not even an argument.
If we were sort of to separate religion and gods, so we're saying that God is the name for someone who created, or something that created everything, then religion doesn't play a part in this. Because if you're correct with your choice of God, then every other religion is incorrect.
I like
Which
that
has
point.
been said a lot, and it's like Dawkins always said as well. If someone were to say that they believe in Zeus, then you would think they were delusional. Yet there was a time when a lot of people believed in Zeus.
You asked a very wholesome and I think productive question, in my humble opinion. You said, okay, if we accept, just for the sake of argument, removing religion, that God as a creator or creative force or impetus for the universe does exist, but then which God is true? This is where the conversation gets very interesting. At their origin, every single prophet of God in every era, on all landscapes, in every civilization, taught one God and one creator.
So where's this from? This information?
Sorry?
Where?
Well, for example, even the original scriptures talk
I
about
don't
it.
believe in the original scriptures. Yeah.
So when it comes to a religion, the religion is based off of the scripture.
Okay.
So if you're going to object to...
so straight away, that's where the fallacy begins, because you're believing the scripture.
I understand. The first point I would make, atheists, usually, they deny the concept of God based off of what they read in the scripture. Because they read what is in the scripture and they say, I refuse to believe in this. But if you're going to look at a philosophy, you have to look at the philosophy on merit and evaluate it based off of what it posits. The Holy Quran, the Bible, the Torah, all of these philosophies, whether God exists or not, they all point to one God. All I'm saying is that all of these philosophies, whether they're true or not, they all point to one creator, that we're one creation under one creator. That's all I'm saying.
All religions point
All major faiths.
all major faiths, yeah,
Right?
all
All major.
religions,
Yeah, like
yeah.
tomorrow, a person could put a hat on and say, I'm a prophet of God and have zero following. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about pagan values. There are two basic parts to this equation. One is the societies to whom the prophets came. They were pagan. They were highly superstitious. They had horrific, difficult views like human sacrifice, etc. The prophets came, they changed that, and they always said, no, it's not that this tree is God or this, it's one creator who is intangible, timeless, all of these things. And that is what I'm talking about. That is the concept of God that human rationality can also accept. Because if God exists, he's outside of space, he must be outside of time, because a thing doesn't cause itself. And it's on the atheist or anyone who posits that the thing does cause itself in the physical world to show that it does. It's all a contingency of events. That's what Richard Dawkins has engaged with this point as well. He says, well, the thing is, he presents what he calls an infinite regress. That you just keep asking who made that. But we're like, okay, but if you reach an entity or a force, whatever you want to call it, the impetus for the Big Bang, let's say, for everything, for the universe to suddenly start expanding at an accelerated rate, whereas before that it was not, 13.8 billion years ago. The claim is that being is infinite. It is a thing that is infinite does not have a beginning, so you don't ask where that infinity came from. So Richard Dawkins presents an infinite regress. But that infinite regress logically must stop where you hit upon something that itself is infinite. Let's not call it God for a second.
But must it? Yeah.
Sorry? Sorry?
Must it?
Must it?
Yeah.
Yes, I'll tell you why. Rationally, you cannot, in a series of contingent events, And that is what our universe is, one event after another after another. That's how we define the flow of time, although that's very difficult to do. But in the most simplistic way, it's describing the change in events or change in matter or change. That's the flow of time in essence. It's all based off of contingent events. That's why Richard Dawkins has spent so much time on this argument. He says that it just keeps going. I'm saying you're positing an infinity. However, we know that if there's a C, let's say our universe here is C, the Big Bang was B in the contingency of events, there must be an A. What we're saying is there has to be a beginning. This universe...
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that.
Oh no, it's not a matter of opinion.
Is it not?
The universe factually began 13.8 billion years ago. There's a beginning to this.
Okay, and how did it begin?
Sorry?
And how did it begin?
The Big Bang came about, and we know that it came about because we look at things like the microwave background radiation, the redshift effect of galaxies.
From the distance.
And
yeah,
yes, the distance.
Yeah.
And we work backwards. We know the nature of the Big Bang and everything that happened and the historical series of events that took place and the way that they changed and evolved and what unraveled after the Big Bang, because we work backwards. Likewise, when we look at the way that the universe operates with incontrovertible function, with undeniable laws that mathematically, probabilistically should not have worked, and we absolutely should not have worked.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So when we work backwards and you see design and you see function, how is it rational to say that there is undeniably design, and these are terms that our leading atheists have used, but no designer, that there are incontrovertibly laws that underpin, and there is no lawgiver.
The watchmaker argument.
Okay.
With the fact that it has to have a creator, yeah.
Yes, that is our observed. I think the watchmaker argument, and not only myself, there are hundreds of people who have debunked that, that is a very dishonest dealing of this question. It is on the atheist to prove that this building that we are looking at, it exactly in the way that it's shaped, can come about without a willful intellect. That has been, I'll be honest with you, that has been waved away by the magic wand of atheism with such irresponsible frivolousness, because nobody will believe that a printing press exploded and all of William Shakespeare's and Tolkien's works came out. And then the only argument that Dawkins offers is, he says, look, if you have an infinite number of monkeys typing on an infinite number of keyboards, eventually given an infinite amount of time, you'll get William Shakespeare's works. I'm like, bro, there have only been 13.8 billion years. What infinite amount of time are you talking about? The monkeys are literally intelligent beings, and you say you need an infinite number of intelligent beings. So you're conceding that there has to be intelligence in the equation. So do you see how this argument is completely untenable? And that's why I say, with due respect, these arguments have not been dealt with.
Yeah, I'm certainly, I wouldn't, as Hitchens always said, I wouldn't be as arrogant to say that there isn't a God. That's why my point was to you, a typical, I've stolen that argument from these great minds that I watch.
Thank you, man. Take care. Take care.
Very nice.
Appreciate it. Take care. Have a great day.